Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Today's episode will be a short one, probably. I'm a bit more time constrained, but I wanted to get some ideas out there. I was looking at this concept of the future, and I was looking at this concept of an invention. And in some sense, an invention appears to be a unique combination of certain activities done, certain things placed in a certain way, and then the invention arises. So what that means is there is a multiplicity in the, I would say, combination of designs. So sometimes, for example, like, let me see how I can say this, like, there have been people, for example, like Jordan Peterson, where he's spoken about the future as a discovery, as if we suddenly discovered the future. We're like, oh my God, I can think about tomorrow, you know? The reason I say is the future an invention, I share that as a question, is because we have certain, how can I tell you, like Edison saw the light bulb in his inner realms, and imagine Edison went to his friends. He's like, guys, I'm gonna make a miniature sun at my house. And his friends are like, you can't do that. You can't create this light bulb. And Edison's like, I'll show you. And so it was as if meaningless attempt, suddenly invention. Right? So that means it's like you don't see the result, you're building up to it. And sometimes when I think about the future of humanity, I feel like in regards to the human psychology, we have to kind of like that light bulb, find the glass, find the wire. It's like an invention, but it's an invention of a living being now. It's like a civilization in the future is the invention of minds. Now, the concept of an inventor, I think that concept for people has different meanings, different values, but for me, I remember that in Iran, when I was like 7, I think I was 7. Anyways, there was this construction going on in front of my house, so I would see these workers, and Iran is like, the houses are made of stone, so the construction projects go on for years. And I don't know, I pretty much had seen this at the same time I had seen the movie I, Robot, and there was this relative of mine that had come to our house when I was in Iran, and the relative came in my room, and at that time I had made, with using 3 Q-tips and like some piece of string and a small motor, I had made a kind of hand, like a kind of robotic looking hand close, okay? It was like something so strange I'd made that it was like, when you do something when you're young and suddenly you discover a new type of attention upon you. Anyways, this relative of mine came to my room. I was in my room. I was very young. And this relative came and saw what I had made and asked me, what do you want to do? Like when you grow up or something, you know? And I remember I'd seen the movie, sorry, not iRobot, Bicentennial Man. I had seen the movie Bicentennial Man, and it was like as if I told him I want to make a factory of robots because I was looking at my environment and I was extracting the meaning from there. There were like construction people working. Like, why are human beings lifting giant stones? Like, it's like the theory. It's like a sort of theory on. At least when I looked at the pyramids, for example, the pyramids of Egypt, the pyramids of Giza, I looked. I wondered, like, yeah, it makes sense if the slaves had to move them, but if this was all in the ocean and rocks were being dropped, that it could in some sense be like the structuring. Like, think about you dropping rocks and they go and land in the ocean. So, anyways, I was thinking about, you see, it's just like an object. You could look at it in different angles. You can look at a subject in different angles. And that's the whole point of these talks, really, with the self-awareness that I'm telling people, that you're not lost to one subject that your attention is on. If you pay attention, you'll notice many thoughts, many subjects come and go. Many, like you can look at one, the human being is an object where the subject changes. What does that mean? That means if I look at a cup, this is going to be a cup till as long as our civilization hasn't gone extinct. You know, people look at this, they're like, yeah, this is a cup. You take this to some person in other place of the neighborhood, and they're like, yeah, this is a cup. But when you try to subjectively specify the human being is an evolving subject. That means you're not just an evolving object. There was a subjective evolution, and the schools don't talk about this. And that's why I am. You know? So, anyways, this notion that we are the inventors of our inner realms because nobody has our eyes. And invention can be said to be a processing. You know, so you can say when your brain is processing sensory perception, it is reinventing you. Also through a subjective sort of assimilation of what experience is relative and isn't. You know? So if the future is an invention, we are right now its inventors. Now, if we look at the future and we realize, all right, so there's like this world that was here before I was born as a human being, and there's going to be this world after I pass away, you know? So there is one world where it's the world from the moment you've been born to the moment we can say that it's like the dash between the gravestone. That's one life we're living. And then there's the life of your species and of all those who will pass and come after you or have passed and come before you. So Ivan, welcome to the chat, guys. Everybody, Kimberly, Ma, and Ivan. Guys, give me a second. I'll get to the subjective evolution. It's not per se personality development. It is the development of personhood. You know? So the first time an object with limbs unconsciously moving in nature felt it was a subject to itself. And I have to explain that in a certain context that I normally do. The subjective evolution for me is a metamorphosis. It is a metamorphosis of identification with just matter to the awareness of matter. So it's like before you were looking at the shadows of the objects in the room, now we're like, holy shit, there's a light in the room, that's our consciousness. So there's a world before you, there's a world after you, and then we can say that there's a world that is the world before you and after you, and there's a world that is from the moment you're born to the moment you navigate out of this plane of existence. So the world before you were here is unknown, and the world after you, if you choose to get involved in this lifetime, you might be able to get a sense of where it's heading, but you'll never, it's kind of like how Khalil Gibran says, your children belong to tomorrow, your children belong to tomorrow, where you can never reach in your dreams, something like that, Khalil Gibran says. I'll get into the subjective evolution later, guys. Don't worry about that. So, anyways, what was I saying? The world here that's here before you, and the world that is here while you're here. Okay, so while we're here, we kind of can see that conscious evolution means that we are gears of a machine that we can choose where of the machine we are. So I want to say that you have an ability to live a life that is, in some sense, a contribution to the invention of the future. Most human beings are born and they don't participate, they watch. Most people are watching. and this may sound a bit savage and biased with me saying this, but it's honestly my view, that I feel a lot of human life is being wasted. It's being wasted in the satisfaction of the human being's inner realms. And when I looked at yoga and mysticism, of course, there's a very profound significance and clarity there, but at the same time, there is an escapism from the world that you feel has eluded you in the first place, has deluded you in the first place. You see, it is very easy to act superior. I'm telling you guys, it's very easy. It's very easy. You can enter a room and just hear whatever is said and not even think about it and just say something else. Do you know, on some level, it's like the loudest voice in the room is dictating how the reality is being interpreted. But if we realize we're more than just voices, and that there is this like attaining his master skill, or even you can see Neo becoming the chosen one or something, and then you would see in some sense an invention being built, and all of it was focused on the introduction of the new. That means it's this strange situation where on some level we have to honor our ancestors so we don't lose the technology they've been passing down, but on another level we are in a totally new circumstance where our ancestors' eyes don't see. I feel that the attention is inventing the subjective realm. Righteousness is the more solitude. Let me say it like this: the more you are not around others, the more your mind is dictating reality. The more you're around others, the more there requires to be a co-creative space of meaning, right? But I feel that in some sense history is reinventing itself through the vision of the human being. There was a man named Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller, they asked him, why do you invent so much? And the dude's like, I just invent stuff if so that in the future their utility will be one day found. And his thinking was like, if an idea has come to me, I'm going to share it. Now its utility may be found later. You know, maybe there's something I'm saying that people right now might not see a value in, but I don't know, maybe even 200 years after I'm even gone, suddenly they see. Maybe right now we are seeing a meaning in Socrates' words and whatnot that not even Socrates himself could see. So in some sense, I remember in the talk last night, I spoke about the evolution of the self and the evolution of the concept. The evolution of the concept and the evolution of the context, and the concept is the self, the conscious concept, and the we can say the context is the world. Okay, so the concept is defined. The context is the space of that definition, you can say. So when I was speaking, I mean, of course, I think many of the people who are regular listeners to this talk have probably heard this, but I'm going to repeat it. You see, we were a self that was not aware of itself. When it became aware of itself, it's a subjective evolution. Now, I say this was the moment the creature saw itself in a reflection. It noticed it is an I thought. And I feel that's the mystery. You see, Noam Chomsky, he speaks about language in such a unique way. He say 10,000, I don't know what he says exactly, the number, like how long ago, but he says a language was imported. That means it seems to be such a unique thing that it seems like as if it was added to the being. It wasn't naturally there. Because when you look at your hands, just look at your hands as a human being, you see, if you put your palms on the ground, you look like an animal. Okay? So that means that there was an evolution. That means that I consider that the first unique, the objective evolution is not per se when man suddenly adapted and his face changed. The objective evolution I consider personally to be when legs, when the design of limbs happened. When this creature, in some sense, could walk on this earth. When it could walk on this earth, it had to re-identify as a different speed of an entity. So the fact that we, in some sense, grew limbs and we started functioning on the earth, it's like we were the earth. The objective evolution happened, we're on the earth. The subjective evolution happened, we are aware how we are the object, how the object has evolved. You can say that it is the kind of advancement of the subjective evolution, how you're even aware you're an object. So when I tell you, when I say the subjective evolution, Ivan, it's not just personality development. Personality development is the evolution after the subjective evolution. The subjective evolution is how you're even considering yourself a person right now. And when in history this suddenly sparked. And for me, I feel that the unique thing, the mystery for me, is the design of limbs, is the design of creatures. Now, if we consider reality to be multidimensional, that means our dimension is limited. That means there's truths we cannot see, even if we wanted to, unless we leave the room, if there's other rooms. However, it can also be the case that man is evoking multidimensionality. So we can think like it's nothing and everything is a simulation, or we can think we're everything and nothing is the simulation. So something very interesting, guys, that we should consider, and it comes to us from Stoic wisdom, and the Stoics it was a branch of philosophy where behavior was the path of truth, not linear measurement. So you see, some human beings, their sense of righteousness, doing the right way of living, is abide by a resonance. But the thing is that I feel we are not on one earth. We are physically on one earth, but we have 8 billion eyes seeing different earths. So it's as if like we're in an external reality. Let me say it like this. For example, in video games, you see that there's a button you can press and you see the inventory of the character in that fictional landscape. Okay, so in a video game, your character has a bag, right? And I feel that bag, other characters in the game cannot see what you have, right? So I consider that to be imagination, and I feel that the creature must become now responsible, especially as we're moving from the era of language worship to the era of advanced communication, that you must realize that the earth you see is first the earth you see. And the earth that we are truly all in would require a sort of kind of, you can say, arithmetic of a subtraction of your inner realms. So you can say, when you don't move the world moves you. When you move how would I say it? When you don't move the world moves you. When you do move the world, you move the world, you know? So, Ultimate Creations, in the chat section, I'm going to tell you a story, and I want to tell you that before language, what was evil? Before identification with characteristics, what was evil? Do you see? Life starts from this strange simplicity, and then as it becomes complex and the complexity is able to question itself, the complexity begins to see it starts from simpler particles. So what does that mean? That means your identity, it's like, I don't think people are just the personality you see. People are this long endurance of tunneling and being exposed to various ways of living. You know, there was this imperial guard, this ruthless warrior who, this is Zen story, this ruthless warrior who how can I say it? This warrior had been in so many battles and he had been undefeated. One day after winning his battle, he kind of looks at like the last person he kills and he's like, where's this guy going? And he wonders about heaven and hell. And so, in this sense, so this guy wonders about like the afterlife, heaven and hell, and all this. And so he looks at his assistant. He's an imperial guard, you know. I'm sorry, not imperial guard. He's a warrior, imperial warrior. And he shouts to his assistant, and he's like, "Find me the most enlightened guy. I gotta go talk to that guy." You know, and this assistant goes, asks around from town, and people say, "Yeah, there's this one guy in the mountains. Go there." So assistant comes and gives the imperial warrior the address, and what do you know? The imperial warrior finds himself at the top of this mountain beyond the clouds, where there's this door to this kind of like monastery. He opens it up, he goes inside, and he doesn't even care. He's just like, you know, like a general entering the room. Everybody is saluting him. He doesn't have to, you know, others are not worried if the general salutes them. You know what I mean? So he goes with that kind of egoic archetype. And he goes inside, and the Zen master is drinking tea with his disciples. And the guy goes in and says, uh, the guy goes in there and says to the sage, and he says, "Tell me now, sage, what is heaven and hell?" As if he's giving a command, as if he's giving an order to one of his soldiers. The Zen master, he takes a sip, and there's a long pause, and all his disciples are like waiting to see what's going to happen. This intense moment. The Zen master looks at the imperial warrior and says, "You are too much of a goon, Goon, too much of a goon and savage and vulgar to even be able to understand it." He's pretty much saying it, you're too much of an animal to understand it. This guy gets offended. This imperial warrior, he's like, "I've been undefeated in battle. You think you can scar me?" And so the imperial warrior instantly, after feeling dishonor, takes his samurai sword, lifts it up in the air, and is about to bring it down with the wrath of 10,000 suns on the head of this guy. Right when the sword is about to hit the head of the Zen master takes a sip of his tea and says, "This is hell. This is the way to hell." And in that moment, the guy stops. The warrior, as if his conscience is holding back his hand from killing the sage. And for a second, suddenly the imperial warrior realizes hate is a state of mind. Evil is a state of mind. And he drops his sword to the ground, and in that moment he kind of like does an honorable bow as if he suddenly realized it, you know? And in that moment the sage says, you know, this is the way to heaven. And that means there is an intelligence that you are painting its experience for you. I would say it like this. I think the best way is to see that we are in a much, the space is unknown, the matter is known. And right now, we are going to an era, I think, where philosophers are going to be needed because we have to question characterhood, not in a way to take it towards non existence, but wonder about its multi existence. Right? Because language is kind of like if you look at words, it's in a multiverse. Every word has its own meaning. Every word is its own image to some degree. So you see, only in reality we are in one place. So we feel how could there be many places? But we don't realize that one onion can have many layers. There is the psychology in human beings. I've noticed this. You can say as a student of existence, I have seen this. That there are certain patterns, experience moves where the moment it feels it is not embraced, it is not accepted, it becomes cruel. I can't, let me tell you guys, there's two types of things. There's an inner strength and there's an outer strength. Your inner strength is how much you can see the chaos but still care for the order. Your outer strength is in some sense how much you can see the order but still realize that chaos is the novelty bringer. That means those people who fear chaos, they try to be chaotic. Those people who fear order try to be ordered. Those people, you see, I can't tell you guys, there is a sort of archetypal color spectrum where just like a light goes through a prism, the identity, the personality of the person is colored by various identifications. And so really, this is the challenge, because right now we are, this Ray Kurzweil, this futurist, he spoke about in some sense that in the year 2050, even Neil Bostrom spoke about this, that superintelligence will arrive. Superintelligence will mean man has created a process, a sort of system that he can no longer control. So in some sense, it's as if releasing AI into nature, because we cannot control it. So that's the thing. That's the thing, that when superintelligence arrives, we have no choice but to wonder of code. So I feel that right now we are seeing ourselves as human beings speaking a language, but perhaps there may come such a digital era, the technological revolution might even be more intense than I have even fathomed. Do you know? And if the technological revolution is more intense, it would mean for the first time that man is being pulled, the gravitational pull of the digital realm is stronger than the natural realm. Let me tell you, do you know how many stories? Let me tell you guys, the kind of spirituality the New Age thinks, there is in regards to esotericism, even, you know, I will tell you, just like you see a system, for example, in a developed country, and you see that system functioning on a much more savage level in an undeveloped country or a developing country, it becomes something where you kind of notice the savageness of the system, which on some level is a reflection of how you see things. So I'm telling you, when you feel, let me tell you, you're not, I feel you cannot be awake if you think the dream still is there. So duality is language, it's storytelling. We're lost to the stories we tell ourselves or the subconscious animates. More than ever now is the time to study the inner space. Because in 50 years, if the technological revolution happens as predicted by some, it will become a state where the users of technology are left with how much they observed the technology in the first place. There's a quote by the poet Rumi. He liberates a lot. He has liberated a lot of human psychology with this quote. He says, "Out beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a place. I will meet you there." And you can see that the human mind can find a state of being where it is the observer of the negative and the positive. So how can the observer be it? Do you see, the mind can scare itself towards extinction? Every person you have judged in this life, have you had their eyes to judge them? When you realize no, then the personality can't be cruel. Because what are you being cruel to? Your impression of others. Anyways, when a person invents something, it's very interesting, I think, because it starts off in the inner space, and there is a sort of bridge of a vision of potentially bringing it about, and the effort to, in some sense, as Michelangelo said, I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free. He saw the design in the rock and he just sculpted it. And I feel that the invention. You see, if we don't give ourselves freedom of vision, so ultimate creations, I hope you're listening. I want to share with you this approach I have, okay? You see, I have been in environments and communities where they have felt the world is transcendental. I have been among communities where they have felt the world isn't transcendental. I have, in some sense, walked in secular halls and religious halls, and I could tell you, even I've heard stories of certain esoteric things that happen in third world countries that it's too savage. You know, it's like, you know what I mean? So I'm telling you that this is what I think the situation is. I think every person is you in front of your eyes. There's a common outer realm that you share with your species. Behind your eyes, it's your inner realm. Right now, if you were imagining, for example, an eagle flying like above your ceiling, let's say, if you were in your room, that's your inner realm. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that your eyes are your eyes. But your eyes are also participating in an outer realm. So behind your eyes, you have access to reality plus its deviations and branching out into various abstract modes. But in front of your eyes, we share one common. So you can say the outer realms are the stable point. They are the ground that doesn't change, but your inner realms can animate in many ways. You know, in some sense, when I've spoken about the inner realms and the outer realms, I say there is one outer realm, and I say there can be endless inner realms. That means think of how many days you've woken up, and the whole moment and the whole day has suddenly had a different story to it, a different context to it. So you see, now we're reaching a point as a species where we have to be conscious of the distinction between our inner realms and our outer realms. When a person is, for example, rude to another person, or arrogance is when that person thinks their inner realms are more accurate than the outer realm. But when we come to the outer realm, it's a co-creative space. Do you know your inner realms are just phenomenology? Everything in life is technically phenomena happening sequentially. And what that means is you wake up in the morning, okay, from deep sleep, from this nothingness, and you come into this something. Okay, and it is something based on your attention, based on your movement, based on how you even breathe. It suggests the life that you see. You see, the Buddha had inner realms. You don't see people calling the Buddha crazy. You see, if we wanted to judge the inner realms, then all our ancestors were insane. Any person who did not have the normality we see, we can consider insane. We could think everybody in history was, excuse my language, but they were like fools. You know? We can totally think that. We can think every human being. You know, we can even think the future generations are going to see us as fools. But were we fools? No. We were just living beings. We were opportunities of attention to be conscious of itself. And sometimes when you don't study the objective realm and you jump into your subjective realms, you forget that the objective realms are what are inspiring you. That means all those people that think there's a soul, did you know how funny it is that if there was not a world, where would that soul be? What would it be? If there was no physical body, you know? Are you a soul? Do you have a soul? Do you see that concept? The unknown goes away if there's nothing known. You know, so I feel that we are this rare opportunity from this unknown, meaningless movement. That means it was before meaning was defined, before there was a creature to even have meaning. It was the unconscious movement of phenomena. Now this phenomena, through some uniqueness, through some path, has evolved after 4 billion years in the outer realms to have an inner realm opinion of its outer realms. So I am realizing that all the animals on this planet, other than the human being, all the other species, they are bound to their ecosystem. You think the lion is thinking about spaceships? No, we saw more than our environment. And that is the power of consciousness, that now you are in an era where you have to become responsible for your inner realms and your outer realms. Do you know? That means when you become responsible for your inner realms, the eyes of others don't define your eyes. But at the same time, there is a need for your own eyes to discover the world that we're all in. You see, I can tell you, fear can be a loop. Do you know, you can feel bad and you can have endless memories of your childhood coming, even good memories, but you could feel as if those memories were bad. You see, we are more multidimensional. It's like behind your eyes, you're a multidimensional being. You have access to reality and imagination, but in front of your eyes, it's just reality. What you gonna do? You know, it's objective stuff. Now, there are times where the inner experience, the outer inner space can, in some sense, receive the outer space different. Do you know? But that has to do with your relationship of the relationship you have with your imagination. And I feel if you truly have a relationship with your imagination, with your own mind, you're going to realize that you can't call it imagination, because it goes from, as even Whitehead suggests, from this kind of just particles in the void, you know, just sight in the void, into a process. And the greatest invention of the future is the suggestion that all the sights, all the inner realms of human beings, and even their outer realms, are all like drops in a river, and we're going towards somewhere. That's the glory of humanity. That's the ethos forgotten. That was the honor that kept the ancestors going, because they realized there's a value. We are here. We are here now. The show is on. You know? The performance has begun the moment you're in conscious existence. The activity occurs then. And you know, I had a dream where in the dream I could move. And I woke up and I was in a shock, and I'm like, hold on. So my physical body is inactive, but while my physical body's in the bed sleeping, you know, it's like my dream state, my mind is living a body. There's a self and a world in my dream. So my mind can be an individual regardless of the outer realm. So there's this huge suggestion that the mind of our life, the life of our mind, is making us actually not be able to clearly see the life of our body. And for those people who have seen the phoenix at the land on the edge of that tall cylindrical white tower, I can tell you that things change. The human being has just evolved to be able to be conscious of its change. We don't have the power to change the rotation of the earth. Do you think right now I want the earth to spin the other way? Is the earth spinning the other way? No. The outer realm's like, sorry buddy, I'm doing my thing. You see, the thing I want to tell you, Ultimate Creations, is that if you do even have a theosophical approach of there being entities beyond veils of perception, or let's say you're like Terence McKenna, you experience something unique and suddenly you opened up to a realm that is unknown. Best thing you can do is document your inner realms and pretty much study after noticing objective reality. Use objective reality as where the search started from, and then study your own inner realms, because nobody really has your eyes, and you have to in some sense really come to see that if Carl Jung was seeing someone who was, for example, talking to beings from other dimensions, you know, for example, as you suggest, Ultimate Creations, it's like Carl Jung would say, all those beings you see in other dimensions, they are how you have tapped into your unconscious mind, and those archetypes are animating. So it's as if certain ways you've processed yourself as a being, but you don't know, you're not conscious of it. And sometimes when the unconscious mind, when one goes into a semi-conscious state, it is possible that the unconscious mind suddenly animates. It's as if your eyes become the camera, and when the camera goes in front of phenomena starts moving. It's like, oh my god, stage time. So I'm telling you, there can be a suggestion. There can be a suggestion that you are your inner realms. You're not just the self in your inner realms, you are also the world. So this is why Buddha, when he closed his eyes and he had an experience where there were these three sisters, three archetypes, like these desires, and he pretty much saw arrows being thrown at him of all the negative modes of reality, and he turned them all to lotus flowers. So the Buddha in his inner realms, while he was sitting down under that tree, this is documented, that while he was sitting under that tree, there were arrows in his inner realms, darkness, like some sort of chaos. The arrows of chaos were shot at him, and he turned them all into lotus flowers, and they fell on the ground. That means he became aware that his attention is the god of his thoughts. I want to read for you. There's something I do in these talks where I say, I call it a quote tunnel. Pretty much, I go and find either a theme or a certain person in history, or even a book maybe, and I just read a bunch of quotes just so the viewers can get a sense of how that person or that book, in some sense, the author had their eyes open to the world, how the eyes of the author were open to the world. So this is from the Lotus Sutra, Saddharma Pundarika Sutra, the Lotus Sutra. The Bodhisattva is like the Buddha that is coming from collective to individual consciousness rather than individual consciousness to collective. The Bodhisattva who listens to the sounds of all the world with his magnificent spiritual power confers, this is from the Lotus Sutra, guys, with his magnificent spiritual power confers such abundant benefits as these. And so living beings should always keep him in their hearts and hold his name in mind. If women seeking sons bow to and make offerings to the Bodhisattva Guen Shiryin, They will give birth to sons happy, virtuous, and wise. If instead they wish for daughters, they will bear gifted daughters with deep-rooted, wholesome characters, beloved and respected by all. Okay, guys, divine agency services. Therefore, this is another quote from the Lotus Sutra. Therefore, the Lotus Sutra is a Buddhist text, guys. It's like this Buddhist text from a while back. Therefore, every single living being should hold to Guan Shuryen Bodhisattva's name in mind, infinite resolve. Suppose someone held the names of the Bodhisattvas to the number of grains of sand in 62 million Ganges rivers, and for the person's entire life made offerings to them all of food and drink, clothes, bedding, and medicine. What is your opinion? Would the merit and virtue accrued by that good man or woman be abundant? Infinite resolve replied, extremely abundant, world honored. I mean, guys, I'm getting a sense that the Lotus Sutra perhaps was written when deities roamed the earth in the minds of men. Let me see what else there is. So another quote from the Lotus Sutra is, the Buddha himself dwells in the great vehicle, and in accord with the Dharma he has gained, adorned with power of samadhi and wisdom, he uses these to save living beings. The Lotus Sutra says, I know that these living beings have never cultivated good roots. They are firmly attached to the 5 desires, and out of stupidity and love become afflicted. Because of all their desires, they fall into the 3 evil paths. They turn on the wheel in the 6 destinies, suffering utter misery. They turn on the wheel in the 6 destinies. Holy shit. Like, that's 6 destinies. I gotta look into this concept. So that means probably parallel dimensions. The Lotus Sutra says, as to that foremost rare and hard to understand Dharma accomplished by the Buddha, only the Buddhas and the Buddha can exhaust the real mark of all Dharmas. That is to say, with regard to all Dharmas, the suchness of the marks, the suchness of the nature, the suchness of the substance, the suchness of the power, the suchness of the function, the suchness of the causes, the suchness of the conditions, the suchness of the effects, the suchness of the retributions, and the suchness of the ultimate equality from beginning to end. You see, guys, it's an awareness. The Dharma is an awareness, and the Buddha is like the activation of it, I think. The Lotus Sutra says, I now rejoice and have no fear, and among the Bodhisattvas I shall cast expedience aside, to speak only of the supreme path. In the Buddha lands of the 10 directions, there is only one Dharma of one vehicle. There are no 2 or 3, except those spoken by the Buddhas as expedients. You see, guys, the Dharma the Buddha spoke, also I remember, he spoke about it as a raft to in some sense, cross samsara. What that means is, some people in this life are telling you, you gotta do certain things to get through this, whatever this life is. But the Buddha was saying, you have to build a raft, but it's not a physical raft, it's an awareness of how self is set into motion by the world you perceive. The Lotus Sutra says, the Buddhas, the world-honored ones, appear in the world because they wish to lead living beings to open the knowledge and vision of the Buddhas and gain purity. They appear in the world because they wish to demonstrate to all living beings the knowledge and vision of the Buddhas. They appear in the world because they wish to lead living beings to awaken to the knowledge and vision of the Buddhas. I think that's a repeat. Literally a sentence written twice, I think. Oh no, maybe it's a difference. Oh my God, the sentence written 3 times. They appear in the world, they wish to lead living beings to enter into the path of knowledge and vision of the Buddhas. You see, guys, I just like that concept, the ultimate path. That means it's like some beings are treating this life as a journey. And I feel when we become conscious of this journey, we in some sense tap into the inventive field of the world. I feel that Terence McKenna spoke about novelty as a quality of a macrocosmic change. But I feel that novelty is the quality of a timeless witness. And you know, Terence McKenna may have said it even in that context. I don't know. He has this talk titled "The Transcendental Object at the End of Time." So when he says transcendental, he means it's probably unknown and intelligent. So most people are kind of looking at either the object is known and hollow, or the subject is unknown and infinite. It's intelligent. So either we are hollow objects or intelligent subjects. You see? We're either known hollow objects or unknown intelligent subjects, you know? You know what the cool thing is? I think we're literally evolving into minds. I honestly feel that the subjective evolution, once it becomes complete, we will no longer be creatures in conception. Right now, it's like when you look at evolution, you're like, wait a minute. Did matter and particles evolve to be a subject to themselves? That means, was the purpose of evolution to become a subject to itself, an unknown subject, a known object evolved into an unknown subject? So that's the thing. That's the thing. I feel we are evolving as the world, not as a creature in the world. I feel that is the case. I feel that maybe in the future we're not going to be objects. The subject is going to be more real than the object. Like a way I can see this, at least, this pattern echoing in the cyberspace culture is like, imagine every person's head was connected to a computer. In that sense, our subjective consciousness is more important than our objective consciousness. And there is this chance that the more the human being forgets its natural roots, the more it's going to think it's digital. That means you were born in nature, so you feel you're natural. But imagine children in the future born in artificial realities. You know, the child's living in this perfect world only to realize that it's this digital simulation, like a virtual reality simulation. You know, there was this shamanic concept, that there was this unique shamanic tribe or something, where the child that was born for 18 years was kept in a dark cave. And then after being kept in a dark cave, the child would be released at the age of 18, suddenly seeing the world for the first time. So after you are comfortable with the void, what else is there? You get bored. You get bored out of the void. A boring void can be called void. Care for the living and the new, and I feel eternal vision will become the space of the temporal destiny. There was this vision I had. So, Rafi Tess, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the chat, Joey. I feel we are. I feel that's just the beginning. I feel there's a technological box that if we don't become conscious, if the users of technology can't handle the vehicle's going to crash. What that means is I feel that my great-great-grandkids potentially Right now, we're asking, is the world a dream or is the world real? Right now, we're asking that, but the children and the future generations are going to be like, is life a digital simulation? Is there more beyond this? Could there be endless digital simulations we're lost in? You know, could us seeing a multiverse just add to the problem? So you see, like, that's the thing. I definitely feel cyberspace culture is arising. You cannot avoid it. It's like a language. How can you avoid certain intelligent movements on your planet that are speaking a certain language? You cannot avoid the language, but you can try to understand the language. This is why there's this whole effort of making children all around the world become aware of coding, like actual programming, right? Because we are moving into an environment where it's happening, you know, where labor is being automated. You know what that means? That means we are designing a civilization that is pushing us out of a need to be a biological entity. And I feel that will change because I think there's something else we can do that's more important than AI, you know? I think that anything that comes and goes will feel like a simulation. Anything that is prone to change, it's like, it's not that we're living in one simulation. We're living in a simulation that is endlessly simulating itself in accordance to how our attention is in the moment. For how long will philosophers, poets, and artists hide in the shadow of modern society? When will they realize that imagination is the source of freedom of speech? That if you cannot see a potential, there is nothing for the kinetic energy to do. And we have to, I'm going to share with you guys my pretty much life's work and the concept of Civilization 2.0. Civilization 2.0 is Mr. Within's strategy to bypass extinction indefinitely, only if phase 1 occurs properly. So I have predicted that we're in 2020 now. In 600 years, hopefully, if certain great transformations occur, in 600 years, phase 1 of Civilization 2.0 will begin, and it will be an attempt for human beings for 2,000 years to go live in the orbit of the planet. When we utilize sky cities, immediately overpopulation, problem solved. Immediately resource allocation, problem solved. It's an endless resource. We're living off it. In regards to human beings destroying, having a negative influence on the earth, it would be in some sense kind of, how would I say it, like problem solved. Now, in that 2,000 years that we're going to, so in the year 2,600, imagine your consciousness is walking in the park of humanity, and like in a park, and suddenly you see all human infrastructure that is considered society lift into the air. It would be an incredible time. Now, when Civilization 2.0 takes place, phase 1 is build sky cities. Phase 2 is Earth Heavena. So while we're living in our orbit after the year 2622, there's going to start this massive project where all those people, all the grandchildren of all the botanists that are alive, will feel their life fulfilled in the sense that we have to replant the earth. So this is Mr. Within's strategy. We live in the orbit for 2,000 years, we restore the earth, we plant it, we allow species to flourish, and suddenly right now, as the more we are live on the surface of the earth, because we have to occupy the space, we have to destroy more ecosystems. So human beings are creatures that our species is not made to live on this earth. Our minds are not. Our body is from the earth, but our minds are not made to just live on this earth. Okay, so in 3,000 600 years from now will be phase three. So we've heavenized, the earth heavena is a term I've created, which in my view, it means the heavenized earth. So we pretty much build earth, turn earth into like an uninhabited paradise. And that's the strategy. We're living for 2,000 years in our orbit, intentionally as a species, so earth can heal itself. Okay, so we heavenize the earth. After earth is heavenized, phase three is the grand moment where in my vision of civilization 2.0, is humanity has a choice. Because civilization 2.0, the way I've written in my writings, it's a yin-yang civilization. That means it's self-aware, you know? So there will be a choice. Either human beings can go back to Earth and explore that Earth that we haven't been on for 2,000 years, or we start interstellar advancement and cyber internal advancement. That means I perceive technology. There's two kinds of technologies. There is the external technologies and inner technologies. Language is an inner technology. Cyberspace culture will be the evolution of the language we program into the machines. Right? So you can say the advancement of inner technologies is virtual reality. The advancement of outer technologies is repopulating the solar system. Do you know? So we shouldn't think overpopulation is a problem. We should just see it in the context that if we were attempting to be an interstellar civilization or a Type 3 civilization, as science says, a civilization that can harness the power of its sun, it would mean that we have to see more than the Earth. We have to move beyond our beliefs of this Earth. You see, uh, you know, it's like this grand calling, guys. It's this calling of any being who is in the paradise of their inner realms to now make their step towards the outer realms. You know, we are not here to just be simulations of meaningless joy. The point of human life is that you can direct it. The direction is in your hands to some degree of your inner realms. So if you direct the value of your inner realms to your outer realms, it will be a win-win for you and your civilization. It will be a win in that life. That is the dash between the time you were born and the time you die, and the world that was here before you and after you. And I feel the grandest contribution is to that other world, to the eyes of those who will go on to search for the meaning. What if you are your whole moment? You're not the contents in it. What if your mind is your whole moment? What if the mind can infinitely animate itself into shapes and place these shapes in its unconscious to feel it's communicating? Anyways, guys, pretty much I just wanted to, in this episode, make a point that humanity must now be seen as a collective process, and all individual realms and inner realms can contribute to this. And we should, in some sense, start what I call the multidimensional renaissance, which is the pouring out of inner realms, where now more than ever there is importance for communication to advance, not silent witnessing only. You know, I honor, I see the light in the eyes of that yogi who saw the burdens of the world and in some sense went to their inner paradise. But I can also see that the inner paradise, it can always be paradise. It can be there. But the factor is that it's like you look at a cup and you see a design to it. Okay. Now, if I use the cup as just like if I don't pour water in the cup, it's as if we haven't utilized the advantage of the design. And if we don't care about the outer realms, it's very easy to get lost in our inner realms. That means don't let your inner realms push you around. That's so important. And they will push you around until you realize the source of you and the source of whatever the theosophist perceived is the void. Those who haven't confronted the void, the unknown has to be a greater story to them. It has to be some mystery. Those who have confronted the void sees all. The void is not the shape, it is the mover of it. That means you think that if there is the notion of some soul, some unknown variable in this mathematical equation of reality, do not enslave your knowing to form only. There's a joy to how Matsuyo Basho, the Zen master, said, the journey itself is my home. That means this dude he didn't see himself in an educational planet. He didn't see himself as if like going up this endless hierarchy towards truth. He saw himself in some sense that his mere being was inseparable from the being of all that is. Your attention is on how you are more an individual activity, because that is the axis of the subjective evolution. The subjective evolution gave us access to our individualism. But in some sense, is the cosmos not dancing where you are dancing? And the great dance goes on. Now more than ever, you must care for your mind. And you will only care for your mind if you care for your world. There is no greater, there's no shortcut, there's no easier way for the karmic turbulence to settle than you caring for more than just your inner realms. So anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. You are the light in the room of what you perceive. And when you care for the world, you will realize you're strangely caring for your own mind. And your mind, when it smiles, it is in some sense the evolution of phenomena. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Much blessings and namaste.